Wednesday, July 22nd, 2026. You are listening to the Daly Dose Sports Podcast, and I am your host, Clint Daly, coming to you from the Mile High City here in Denver, Colorado, and we are back for another week of talking sports with a dose of common sense. Hey, happy Wednesday to you. I hope your week is going well. I hope you, your family, your friends, everyone in your world is staying strong and healthy right now. Don't look now, but it's already Wednesday. You're already halfway to another weekend. That's always a good thing. And hey, the 2026 World Cup is now complete. Congratulations to Spain, who had to beat Portugal, Belgium, France, and finally Argentina. They beat Argentina 1-0 on Sunday. Is that 1-0? Is that what we're going to say? Whatever. They beat Argentina 1-0 on Sunday to complete their run. Hey, you know, Spain only managed that one goal in extra time. They got a goal from Ferran Torres. But that Spain defense, they were absolutely dominant the entire tournament. Think about this for 1 second. In the 2026 World Cup, there were 309 goals scored in the entire tournament. Spain allowed one. And I know the popular pick on Sunday was that Argentina and Lionel Messi, they're going to do it again. They're going to win again. This is all fake. This is all fixed. This is all predictable. And they made it interesting, but they could not get past that defense. Messi couldn't breathe all day. He barely even had the ball. Spain jumped on them from the beginning and dominated that game. That game, honestly, it felt like a 4 or 5 goal lead, but they just couldn't score. They just couldn't find one. One thing we have to discuss, the halftime show. The halftime show was interesting. I mean, make no mistake, it was a star-studded event on Sunday. We had Shakira. We had BTS, whatever that is. We had Justin Bieber. We had Kermit the Frog and Miss Piggy all on stage. What do you mean? We had Madonna. Where was Madonna? That was Madonna? Holy cow. I had no idea. I thought the opener was Miss Piggy. My bad. I guess Madonna was there too. Who knew? So the Muppets were there and Madonna was there? Okay, well, learned something new today. I was sure I had seen the Muppets there. Here's a question. How does one go about booking Muppets? Do you just call Scooter? Call Kermit? I'm not sure who you call, but you call someone. I don't know how you book the Muppets. I'd like to book the Muppets on the Dose. I'm not sure we could do that. But anyways, congrats to Spain on a dominant World Cup run. And don't forget that the Women's World Cup is actually next summer. It will be in Brazil. Whoa. Who is up for making a trip to Brazil? That sounds like a wild, wild adventure. One more thing we need to touch on. We do have a bit of news to report this morning as NBA superstar LeBron James has been trying to decide where he will be playing next season. And right now, we have some breaking news. And here's that news. No one cares. Hey, today on The Dose, we are going to do something completely different. We've done a few of these shows in the past, but this week, we will be bringing you our Daly Dose Storytime. You know, one of my favorite things in life, honestly, is a good story. I love a good story, and sports stories have a particular special place in my heart. Hey, give me a great story. Cool. Give me a great sports story and one that I haven't heard before. Let's go, Jerry. Go! So today, I will be bringing you a few sports stories, and I'm going to tell you right now, you probably haven't heard these ones before. In fact, let's jump in to our first one right now, and let's start off in the world of Major League Baseball. Have you ever heard the name Ed Head? Yeah, probably not. Well, Edward Marvin Head was a young, talented kid. Born and raised in Louisiana, Head was a left-handed pitching phenom, and he was showing some serious skills as a teenager, and then his life actually would change dramatically, because when Ed was just 15 years old, tragedy struck. Ed was riding a school bus. He had his arm around his girlfriend's shoulder when the bus collided with another oncoming bus, and the impact knocked Ed unconscious. When he came to, Ed saw his girlfriend was dead from the crash, and he saw his left arm, his pitching arm, had been ripped from its socket and was dangling by a thread. So Ed underwent a number of surgeries to save that arm, and actually doctors managed to avoid amputating his left arm, but they told him, it's never going to work right again. You suffered way too much muscle damage. You suffered way too much nerve damage. It's not going to be the same. Hope you find something else to do to pass the time, because baseball for you, sorry to say, it's over. Well, Ed Head was a determined young guy. Maybe it was that goofy name he got. I don't know. If you're named Ed Head, maybe you just got a bull head. Once he recovered, Ed went back to pitching. Well, he couldn't use his left arm. Like I said, there was too much damage. So he taught himself to pitch right-handed instead, and he actually became pretty good with the right hand too. How good? Well, in 1940, Ed Head actually joined the Brooklyn Dodgers, but after compiling a record of just 1-2, they sent him down to the minor leagues to get a little more work. Well, he returned in 1942, and he was promoted to the team's starting rotation. He went 10-6 for the season. Not bad. In 43, he wasn't quite as good. His record was 9-10, but he recovered in 1944 and started the season 4-3. He had a career-low ERA of 2.70, but then some more bad news for Ed, because America joined World War II, and young Mr. Head had to join the Army. He had to fulfill his service obligation. Okay, well, that should do it for his career, right? I mean, Ed Head is now 25. He went away to the Army. But again, Ed Head was not like most people. He was a determined guy. After serving in the Army and not pitching in the majors for most of 44 and all of 45, he actually came back to baseball, took the mound on April 23rd, 1946, and he faced the Boston Braves in his first start of the season. Well, Ed was now 28. He hadn't pitched in like 2 years, but on that night, Ed Head could do no wrong. Head threw a no-hitter, going all 9 innings and facing 25 batters as the Dodgers beat the Braves 5-0 at home. Several weeks later, Head injured that right arm, and he didn't pitch for the rest of the season. He managed to make spring training the next year, but he actually never pitched in the majors again. His no-hitter was the last game he ever pitched. Ed Head had literally every excuse imaginable to not be a big league pitcher. Yeah, too bad. Not only did he make the big leagues, but he had an absolutely unforgettable game when he got there. Continuing with our Daly Dose story time, and of course, we've all heard the story of the incomparable Jackie Robinson. Robinson broke the color line when he started at first base for the Brooklyn Dodgers back on April 15, 1947. The Dodgers signing Robinson heralded the end of racial segregation in professional baseball, which had relegated black players to the Negro Leagues since the 1880s. Hey, it wasn't just baseball, though. Jackie was a 4-letter athlete at UCLA. He played football, baseball, ran track, and played basketball. Jackie Robinson is one of the greatest athletes in any era, and a lot of us know that story. But what you might not know is that Jackie was not the only athlete in the family. You see, Jackie was the youngest of 5 children, born to Mally and Jerry Robinson after siblings Edgar, Frank, Matthew, who is nicknamed Mac, and then his sister Willa Mae. The Robinson kids were born in Georgia, but were left fatherless at an early age, leaving their mother, Mally Robinson, as the sole provider for 5 kids. Well, Mally performed a variety of manual labor tasks, but then she decided to head west, and she moved with the kids to Pasadena, California, while the kids were still very young. And at the start of middle school, Matthew, known as Mac, was diagnosed with a heart murmur that got worse with age. And so he was advised to only play non-contact sports. Well, Mac decided to run in track, and he was pretty good. He set national junior college records in the 100-meter, 200-meter, and long jump while attending Pasadena Junior College, and he would eventually go on to the University of Oregon. Well, it wasn't just his younger brother Jackie that stole Mac's thunder, because Mac was actually good enough to make the 1936 USA Olympic team. He went to Berlin and he won the silver medal at the Summer Olympics in Berlin, finishing 0.4 seconds behind another American, a young, talented runner from The Ohio State University by the name of Jesse Owens. Now, later in life, Mac was known for leading the fight against street crime in his hometown of Pasadena. The Pasadena Robinson Memorial is dedicated to both Mac and Jackie, but Mac died of complications from diabetes in March of 2000 at a hospital in Pasadena at the age of 85. And in addition to that Pasadena Robinson Memorial, the stadium of Pasadena City College was also dedicated to Mac in the year 2000. Yes, he was overshadowed by his brother Jackie in the US. And he was overshadowed by the great Jesse Owens in Berlin. But Mac Robinson, he was a pretty phenomenal athlete in his own right. Okay, let's move over to the world of the NBA. I know that the New York Knicks are one of the most popular teams on the planet right now. But understand this, the Knicks were also extremely popular back in the 1990s. Madison Square Garden, which of course hosts the biggest musical acts on the planet, was booming back then because the Knicks were good. Head coach Pat Riley had assembled a team of tough guys. They were not afraid to mix it up, and they were not afraid to do whatever it took to beat opponents. Patrick Ewing, Larry Johnson, Allen Houston, Anthony Mason, Hubert Davis, Charles Oakley, John Starks, and Charles Smith were a rough group that locked you up defensively and tried to push buttons and see if they could get you to start a fight and get you out of your game. Well, it seems those rough and tough Knicks were crossing over into the world of hip-hop in a very disturbing way. We go back to March 25th, 1997, 16 days after the rapper Notorious B.I.G. was murdered in Los Angeles. And Life After Death arrived, which was a landmark hip-hop album. Buried on that album was track number 12, which was titled I Got a Story to Tell. Well, let's break down this song's plot. I'm going to paraphrase here. I'm going to condense it a little bit, but it tells a wild tale. Biggie leaves a club with a woman who is driving a Mercedes, which he suspects isn't hers. She brings him back to the house, which has televisions and Versace everywhere, and it's revealed in due time that the man this girl is cheating on with Biggie is a New York Knick. Uh-oh. Soon, the nasty couple is messing around on the boyfriend's bed because he says the girl's boyfriend is gone playing against the Utah Jazz. Then from downstairs, they hear the front door. The man is home early. Well, the notorious big one came up with quite a cover for getting caught. The woman stalls the only way she can. She sends her enormous Knick boyfriend downstairs to get her a drink. And her and Biggie come up with a plan. Here's Biggie's solution. It's a wild one. He wraps her scarf around his face, ties her up, gags her with a pillowcase, and pretends to be a home invader. Hey, pretty inventive, right? When the boyfriend comes up, he's face to face with Biggie, who is acting now like an armed stranger. The supposed Knick drops the glass and begs for his life. Biggie has him peel back the carpet and he sees stacks of cash because apparently this Knicks player didn't believe in banks and hid his cash in the house like a prohibition bootlegger. Biggie loads the money into a backpack, grabs the keys, calls his boys on the way out, and delivers the sentence that gave the song its name, I Got a Story to Tell. One more minor detail that must be mentioned. In the outro, Biggie claims he never knew which Knick it was, just that it was one of the taller Knicks, at least 6'5". Well, of course, amateur detectives all ask the same question, was any of it true? And for nearly 2 decades, fans would play detective with 3 clues that were left in the song. So you had a Knick around 6'5", home on a night his team played Utah, and that last one was big because it's impossible to fly back from Salt Lake City to interrupt this. So they had to be playing in the Garden at home, which lands on November 12th, 1995. Well, a lot of people thought it was John Starks. He spent years as the guy it was likely going to be, But then he went on Highly Questionable on ESPN and said, hey, it's not me. I'm only 6'2". I heard the story, but it's not me. And I know the player, but snitches get stitches, and I'm not talking. So the mystery continued until May 2016, when Fat Joe, one of Biggie's closest friends and contemporaries, gave up the name the city had been chasing for nearly 20 years. He was speaking on a show because a former Knick had passed, and Fat Joe declared the song was about one of his best friends. The player stood 6'7", 250 pounds. He was a Queens kid. He played for the Knicks from 91 to 96, and he was named the Sixth Man of the Year in 95, but Anthony Mason died of a heart attack at 48 in February 2015. And since he was gone, Fat Joe felt he could finally let the story be told. You know, we don't always talk a ton about auto racing here on The Dose, although we touch on it here and there. But my father was a race car driver, and I have heard some pretty incredible racing stories in my life. I've even been fortunate enough to witness a few firsthand. Well, I have one today that might need more of a warning than that Biggie Anthony Mason story, because this one's going to be rough. Hold on tight. We had a driver back in the 70s and 80s. His name was Gordon Smiley, and he began his racing career at the age of 19. He was very talented. He raced SCCA, he raced Formula Atlantic, Formula 1000, Can-Am, Formula 5000. In 1979, Smiley actually raced in the British Formula One Championship, and in 11 races, he had 8 top 10 finishes, including a win at Silverstone in 79. Well, Smiley raced in the Indy 500 twice. In 1980, he finished 25th after his car broke down. And in 81, he actually led a lap, but he would crash and finish 22nd. Well, in 82, Gordon Smiley was back and he was looking to do some big things. He was driving for Fletcher Racing, and speeds at the Speedway were getting really fast. Both Kevin Cogan and Rick Mears set new single lap records. They were going over 200 miles an hour. So Smiley went out for a qualifying attempt an hour later, and it did not go well, because Smiley was determined to break that 200 mile per hour barrier, and he pushed his car way too hard. On the second warm-up lap, his car began to oversteer while rounding the third corner, and his car started to slide. When Smiley steered right to try to correct this, the front wheels grabbed some grip, and his car suddenly shot across the track and into the wall nose first at nearly 200 miles an hour. Well, the impact shattered the chassis. It completely disintegrated, and it caused the fuel tank to explode. It sent debris, including Smiley, into the fence and then back out onto the track. And Smiley died instantly from massive trauma inflicted by the impact. His death was actually the first at Indy since 73, when Art Pollard and Swede Savage had been killed. It was a disturbing, sad story. Oh, except for right now, yeah, it's going to get a little bit worse, because we actually got a recap from the CART medical director on the scene, a veteran by the name of Steve Olvey. Here is that recap. Bear with me. While rushing to the car, I noticed small splotches of peculiar gray substance making a trail on the asphalt leading to the driver. When I reached the car, I was shocked to see Smiley's helmet was gone. Also gone was the top of his skull. He had essentially been scalped by the debris fence. The material on the racetrack was his brain. His helmet, due to massive centrifugal force, was literally pulled from his head on impact. I rode to the care center with the body. On the way in, I performed an examination and realized that every bone in his body was shattered. He had a gaping wound in his side. It looked as if he had been attacked by a shark. I had never seen such trauma. Look, I realize that auto racing in this modern era has become infinitely safer, way safer than generations that came before. But never underestimate the risks that are possible when these guys get behind the wheel. They literally have to face their own mortality every single time they climb into a car. We can debate whether or not auto racing is a sport. I've seen what it does to you physically, but make no mistake, these guys are a different breed. You know, college football is going to be here before we know it, and after that last story, we might have to talk about something a little lighter. Well, college football is amazing because you have those big-time rivalries, you have those big-time games, Everyone's watching them. But also, sometimes you get a game between two lesser-known schools, and it ends up being absolutely unbelievable. And that was the case in October of 2002 when the Furman Paladins squared off against the Appalachian State Mountaineers. Now, for most of us, that game is on one of those cable channels you never watch. Maybe we see a play or two on the college football final on Sunday morning, but this game was memorable for a few reasons. Furman actually took a 6-0 lead in the third quarter, but then late in the third quarter, Furman quarterback Billy Napier, yes, that same Billy Napier, that is the new head coach at James Madison after being fired at the University of Florida, well, he threw an interception to cornerback Jay Lyles, who returned it 43 yards for a touchdown. Appalachian State takes back the lead 7-6. But in the fourth quarter, Furman once again took the lead back 9-7 on a field goal. Appalachian State responds with a touchdown pass. The Mountaineers lead 14-9 with a little over 5 minutes to play. Well, things are about to get crazy. Because Napier, who had a decent game except for some turnovers, drove the Paladins offense to the Appalachian State 12-yard line with less than 20 seconds to play. Napier drops back. He throws a dart to wide receiver Bear Reinhardt for a touchdown with just seconds remaining. Now, if that name Bear Reinhardt sounds familiar to you, it is because he went on to found the American rock band Need to Breathe, which has had some commercial success, and you've probably heard their song Great Night 50 million times on TV commercials. But back to the game. Seconds remaining. The Paladins now lead 15-14. You have the extra point coming. You can kneel on it, squib kick the kickoff, and steal a win on the road. You can kick the extra point, squib the kickoff, steal a win on the road. There's a few options. But Paladins head coach Bobby Lamb wanted to be aggressive. He said, hey, we're going for 2. We're going to go up by a field goal. I get it. It would give them a 3-point lead. There's just one key. Whatever you do, you can't turn it over. On the 2-point conversion, Napier takes a quick drop and fires a short pass to the left flat, which of course was directly into the chest of defensive end Josh Jeffries, who immediately pitched it to his teammate cornerback Derek Black, who returned the ball for 2 points, and the Mountaineers take the lead 16-15 and win the game as Appalachian State fans rush the field in an embarrassing display because they were favored already. The Miracle on the Mountain is not a game that is all that well known in the annals of college football history, but it is a memorable game that reminds us it doesn't have to be the biggest teams. It doesn't have to be the biggest rivalries. Sometimes you just get an amazing game in the world of college football. Let's finish off our Daily Dose Storytime, and I actually have a little bit of Denver Broncos trivia for you today. You can play right now wherever you're listening. What player in Denver Broncos history scored the very first touchdown in playoff history and in Super Bowl history for the Denver Broncos franchise? Now, you might hear that question, and maybe you think John Elway or Terrell Davis. But no, those players would come much later. Remember that the Broncos were originally an AFL franchise, and to be quite honest, they were mostly terrible. In fact, the Broncos are the only AFL team that never played in an AFL championship game. But by 1977, they had built up quite a squad. They had a really good defense and a functional offense at times, and they took a 12-2 record to the playoffs, and the Denver Broncos made the playoffs for the first time in franchise history. Well, first game, they get to see the powerful Pittsburgh Steelers. But the Broncos defense forced 4 turnovers, and Denver advanced 34-21. Next up, they get the defending Super Bowl champion Oakland Raiders, and on a freezing New Year's Day in Denver, the Broncos squeaked out a 20-17 win. That was not without controversy, and they went to their very first Super Bowl, Super Bowl 12, where they lost to Tom Landry and Roger Staubach and the Dallas Cowboys 27-10. For the record, a running back by the name of Rob Lytle, a Michigan guy, scored the first touchdown against Pittsburgh and the first touchdown against Dallas, and he's the answer to our trivia question. Use that one to amaze and astound your friends. But back to the Raider game controversy. The Broncos had beaten Pittsburgh, and the city of Denver had lost its collective mind. People were painting their cars orange. People were painting their houses orange. The franchise had never been good and was suddenly going to face their biggest rival in the AFC Championship game at home. It was a New Year's Day game, and the old Mile High Stadium was standing room only. Well, the Raiders struck first. They kicked a field goal. But then quarterback Craig Morton hit wide receiver Haven Moses for a 74-yard touchdown, and the entire city shook as Denver took a 7-3 lead at halftime. But this team wasn't done. In the third quarter, the defense forced a fumble, and the offense took over inside the Raider 20-yard line. They drove to the Oakland 2-yard line, and here's where we got our controversy. On first down, Morton turned and handed the ball to Lytle, who tried to dive into the end zone. One problem. He was met in midair by Raiders safety Jack Tatum, who blasted Lytle backward. And Lytle was actually knocked woozy, and he dropped the ball, which the Raiders recovered. Well, the officials didn't see the fumble. They ruled on the hit, Lytle's momentum had been stopped, and so Denver maintained possession, and they went on to score, and they went on to win the game and go to the Super Bowl. But of course, as Raider fans are wont to do, they bring up all the slights in the history of their franchise. And whether it is the Lytle fumble, or the tuck rule, or whatever, they're always asking about, well, what about this and what about that? And you know how Raider fans are. Well, they would constantly ask former head coach John Madden about those things after his retirement from coaching. However, whenever people would ask Madden if he thought the Raiders, kind of got screwed on that play in Denver, his answer was always the same. John Madden would say, I didn't really care about the ball or the score or any of that. I knew that Rob Lytle had taken a really significant hit to the head the previous week against the Steelers, and when he got hit by Jack in the game, I was worried about his welfare. I didn't care about the rest of it. I just wanted him to be okay. Well, it turns out Madden was right to be concerned. Because after playing just 6 years in the league, Lytle was out of the game, and he would eventually have a heart attack. At the young age of 56, he would pass away, and an autopsy of his brain revealed he had moderate to severe CTE. Well, John Madden would stay in contact with Rob Lytle's widow. He would check in on her, see how she was doing. He would help her financially until he himself passed away in 2021. Now, far be it from me to dole out any praise to any member of the Raiders organization ever. But John Madden was a phenomenal football coach. He won a Super Bowl and he won an AFL championship. He went on to an incredible broadcasting career. He became synonymous with big games. If you heard John Madden on the broadcast, you knew you're probably seeing must-see TV. He would create the Madden video game series that is still going strong to this day. John Madden was an ambassador for the NFL. But, after hearing some of these stories, hearing that story about Rob Lytle, I actually think John Madden may have been a better person than any of those other titles that he had in his career. Hey, next week on The Dose, we are still in a bit of a dry time of year, but make no mistake, we are going to begin ramping up for the college football and NFL seasons. That is going to begin next week. We're going to be bringing you about a month's worth of prep for college football and NFL. Plus, we'll keep you up on all that is going on in the world of sports right now. So be sure you're tuning in to The Dose, and be sure you let a friend know to do the same. Hey, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for listening to the Daly Dose every week. Thank you for the emails. Thank you for the texts. Thank you for the tweets. But more than anything, thank you for sharing the show, for sharing the videos, and for sharing the articles with someone that you know. We absolutely love it when you do that. I have to say thank you to JSP. Could not do any of this without you. I will see you all next Wednesday. Have a great week, everybody.
Let's go, Jerry. Go!